Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Ann Reardon and today we are making a giant Butterfinger chocolate bar with crunchy thin layers of caramel with peanut butter in between. Here on How to Cook That I make giant chocolate bars and give them to people who are doing giant things. And we've done a giant Hershey's Kiss, a Tim Tam, Toblerone, Snickers, Kit Kat, Twix, Mars bar and even a Ferrero Rocher. Let me know what you'd like to see next in the comments below. This one had heaps of requests, but we don't actually have Butterfinger here in Australia, so I had to order some in from the US so I could have a taste. Butterfinger bars taste peanutty and they have an unusual crunchy layered texture, so it took lots of experimenting and doing things in my kitchen to figure out how we could make something very similar without the use of commercial machinery and without commercial ingredients. So to make it, what you're going to need is sugar, peanut butter, water, glucose syrup or corn syrup, more peanut butter, and corn flour or cornstarch. And you'll also need a tiny bit of citric acid. I'll put all the recipe quantities on the howtocookthat.net website for you in grams and ounces and cups, and I'll put a link to that below. With the peanut butter and the corn flour, we want to warm up the peanut butter in the microwave and then mix through the corn flour. Now we don't need the peanut butter to be hot, we just need it to be a little bit more liquidy to make it easier to mix in. In the real Butterfinger, they use freeze-dried flakes of corn. And if you can get hold of those, just switch them out for the cornstarch, but they're not cornflakes like the cereal cornflakes, so don't use that. Place the sugar, water and glucose syrup into a pan and stir that until the sugar is dissolved. Then use a wet pastry brush and wash down the sides of the pan. This just gets rid of any sugar crystals that are on the side of the pan because they can cause it to crystallize back out, which is not what we want. Add a candy thermometer and then add in the citric acid, just sprinkle it over the top. And now we want to let that boil unstirred until it goes golden, and we want to keep heating it up until it reaches 310 degrees Fahrenheit. Remove it from the heat and stir through the peanut butter that doesn't have the cornstarch in it. And this is only 1/6 of the total amount we're going to need for this giant bar, but we have to make it in sections or it would be too big to handle for the next step that we need to do. Immediately pour that out onto a large baking silicone mat and spread it out evenly. Be careful not to touch it, as you know it is extremely hot. Let it cool slightly and then spread some of that peanut butter corn flour mixture over the top of 1/2. Using the mat, fold the hot sugar over the peanut butter and press it down slightly. Lift the mat off. Now if it's sticking to the mat like this, it needs to be a little bit cooler. Try flipping it over and see if the bench has cooled down the other side so you can peel off that one. Spread more peanut butter mixture on 1/2 and then fold it over again. Then fold it again, and you can see that we are starting to get layers there, but we want them to be much, much thinner. Try and keep it in a rectangle shape, just use your hands to shape it. Then put the mat over it and roll it out with a rolling pin just to flatten it slightly. Then fold that in half and roll it again. And we want to continue to roll and fold and roll and fold because this will make the layers thinner and thinner. And I'm going to do this about 10 times. And if it gets too firm to work with, just pop it on a tray in the oven for about 30 seconds to warm it so that you can try again. And you want to make sure you shape it into the shape of our bar. I'm doing this bar in 2 halves because I have to get it into my hand luggage and onto an aeroplane. So if I wasn't doing that, I would just make it as one big one, but you've still got to do it in batches, obviously. So make your rectangle shape and then leave that one to cool. And when you make your next batch, you're just going to stack that warm one on top of the one that's cooled, just pushing it down gently with your hand so that that's stacked up there. So we'll have 3 batches stacked up on each half of the bar. Pour some tempered chocolate onto the baking paper and add the bar on top. And you can see all those layers in the candy there. Once that chocolate is set, take a knife and trim around the base to make it nice and straight. Now balance the bar onto 2 glasses and pour tempered chocolate over the top, just letting it drip down the sides. Now, if you've not tempered chocolate before, I have a whole video explaining the various ways to do it at home and what it means. It just means that the chocolate will set firm at room temperature. If you don't do that, it will only be firm while it's in the fridge, which is not going to work when we've got to take it on a plane. Now, you can go to the chocolate playlist on youtube.com/how-to-cook-that, or I'll put a link to it below so you can find that chocolate secrets video. Once those drips have set, just run a knife along the base to cut them off. Now to wrap it, just place the 2 halves top side down onto some yellow contact, and obviously if you're not going on a plane you could just have the 1 bar instead of the 2 halves, and then place a piece of corflute board over the top and wrap the contact around, sticking it together at the underneath there. Then flip it back the right way up, and at each end peel off the backing and then just fold that down over the end of the bar like you're wrapping a present. Then pull out the sticky part, just pull it out to flatten it and push the ends together. Cut off the excess using pinking shears so you get that jagged zigzag edge. Then you just want to print out the words and glue them on over the top. So today's guest, we have Seth Franco, who is a famous basketballer and a motivational speaker who speaks to students all around the world.
Hey, nice to be here.
So I have a few questions for you first. I'd like to know, where do you live?
Well, I live in Pittsburgh now, and I'm originally from New York.
Nice place. And what is the best thing about Australia?
The food.
Are you a sweet tooth or savoury?
I'm more of a sweet tooth.
More of a sweet tooth. Perfect. You're on the right channel. What is the longest time you've ever spun a ball on your finger for?
You can pretty much spin it as long as you want.
And is there a world record?
I believe it's over 3 hours long.
I have a confession. I have never tried to spin a ball on my finger before.
Do you want to try and spin a basketball right now?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
When we go speak at schools, especially with the young kids, I'll spin a basketball.
Yeah.
And then I'll grab their finger and I'll put it on for them.
I'm a bit nervous.
Don't be nervous. It goes right there on the tip of your nail, just like that.
There you go. That's pretty cool. Now, if I actually wanted to learn how to do that, how long does that take to learn to do it yourself?
I tell kids that if they practice every day for a few minutes, probably about a month, they can learn how to do it.
Or they could just have you and then you can do it instantly.
Or I could do it.
Is your favourite basketballer Kobe or Jordan?
Michael Jordan, in my book, is the best player who's ever played the game of basketball. Some people may have an argument with that.
Yeah, in the comments. Let us know who you think is the best. And you were playing college basketball. You had a scholarship. Yeah. Life was on the up for someone who wants to be a basketballer. Then what happened?
I woke up one morning and I wasn't able to walk.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, I was frustrated and scared. I reached out to a buddy of mine. He took me to the hospital and I had surgery on my left leg. I went from being in a wheelchair to crutches to using a cane to walking.
How long was that process?
A couple months.
Couple of months. So it sounds easy and fast forward, but I'm sure it would be frustrating.
Sure. During that time when I couldn't work on playing basketball with my legs, I worked on basketball tricks and hand-eye coordination, just trying to pass the time. And
so was that the end of your basketball career, basically?
No, I continued to play, even though I was struggling. I still was strong enough to compete and hide my pain. Kenny the Jet Smith, a former NBA player with the Houston Rockets, who played during Michael Jordan's era, he recommended me to the Harlem Globetrotters.
Great.
And so I went out and tried out for the Globetrotters, a 10-day tryout, and every day, like a reality TV show, they would cut one player, and I ended up making the team.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, I started to live my dream out. We traveled all over the world. Was on television, newspaper, magazines, radio. It was a dream come true.
So you went from living what you thought was going to be a dream to your hopes just getting totally dashed. And then was there ever a moment there where you just actually felt like giving up?
That's a great question because that moment came after playing with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Okay.
I never finished that year, so that dream came true. And I never finished my rookie year. I was 2 weeks away. We were in France on a world tour. I went to get up into the game, and I started to cry. I couldn't get up. The trainer took me to a vehicle and we went to the hospital, and the doctors came out and said, you have what's called hip dysplasia.
In Australia, everybody, all the babies, like I know my kids were screened for that and they get put in a brace.
Yeah, most of the time if you're diagnosed, it's when you're a young child or an infant. I had a minor case of hip dysplasia, and they say the minor cases of hip dysplasia are the worst because they go undetected.
Right.
And
so you
I'm
had
like
no
a textbook
treatment.
situation. Yeah, I lost the ability to walk later on. I had to stop playing, and they said you have to have both your hips replaced.
Wow, and how old were you then?
I was 25.
And so that's not something a 25-year-old usually goes through.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, I had my left hip replaced, and then next month I had my right hip replaced.
Wow.
So my story is still unfolding, and I go through times where I feel discouraged, but I've learned something great. It's okay to struggle, but it's not okay to give up. You can take your pain and do something negative with it, hurt someone else, or you can take your pain and turn it into something positive.
And that's powerful.
And sometimes the fastest way to get out of a tough time is to take your eyes off yourself and help someone out. You know?
I love that. Others focused.
Even our interview today, maybe there's someone watching who's going through something. And maybe they'll be reminded that they have the power to choose the right attitude no matter what they're going through.
Yeah, which is awesome. Well, we love what you're doing. We love that you didn't give up and that you are now others focused and doing what you're doing. And on my channel on How to Cook That, we have a special way of saying thank you to people who we think are doing amazing things. So we have one more question for you. Do you prefer Milky Way or Butterfinger?
Butterfinger.
Butterfinger.
Yep.
Okay, well, I have here for you today a giant,
Whoa.
if we can get this off, a giant Butterfinger bar that we have made for you. So you can try and pick it up if you like.
That is awesome.
See if you can spin that on your finger.
This is no joke. This is heavy.
No, this is no joke. This is actually a real giant Butterfinger.
That is awesome. You just made my day.
Great. Well, we'll get you to open it up. I don't think you'll be able to bite it.
This really is a giant Butterfinger.
It really is a giant Butterfinger, that's right.
This is what it's all about right here. That's really good.
Be inspired to do giant things.
It tastes just like a Butterfinger.
Subscribe to How to Cook That for more cakes, chocolates and desserts. Click here for the giant chocolate bar series, here for the recipe, and here for my YouTube channel. Share this video with a friend, make it a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.
I'm shocked that you made it so accurate.